Welcome back, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we try to crack the code on growing your business by tackling the revenue challenges that keep leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ormans, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into a kind of a fun topic, I'll say, and I'm not really sure how to position it. It's either new innovation to a mature customer base or onboarding more customers for the most success they've seen. It's one of the two. It's somewhere in between. Today's podcast is sponsored by Virtual Causeway. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Your website traffic, it's down. Your leads likely have dried up. And the traditional demand gen, it's kind of outdated. AI has changed everything. People are now learning about your company as well as you through LLMs, and you'd never know it. Virtual Causeway helps you flip the script. They don't just chase leads. They create conversations with pre-qualified buyers who are ready to talk. If you need to break into a new vertical, fill event seats, book quality meetings, they become your team's extension. To learn more about them, visit virtualcauseway.com and mention the show for a special rate. So today, I got to tell you, I'm super pumped about this. My guest today is Christina Brady. So Christina and I were classmates together in one of Pavilion's CRO schools. I think it was CRO school. It might have been CMO school, but it was one of the schools from Pavilion. And admittedly, I knew of her because of the class and the incredibly cool technology that she's building. Now, Kyle Himmelwright, he's been a guest on the show, and he's a good friend of mine. He said, Carl, you and Christina need to chop it up. You will have a great conversation. And so it took me a little bit of time, but here we are. But Christina has an incredibly impressive background in revenue. She started insurance sales before she jumped into the world of tech as an AE at Groupon. And she rose through the ranks really quickly at Groupon. She became their head of revenue. Then she joined Glassdoor and had several leadership roles, including the head of sales. Then she moved into a president role and chief strategy officer at Sales Assembly, the SVP of sales for Speckit, and the Chicago chapter, I should say, the Chicago chapter head for Pavilion. And now she's a 3-time CEO to watch. She's an ex-improv performer, which I'm super curious to talk about that one as well, especially with my previous chat with and also today, she's the CEO of an amazing new sales tech and sales enablement company called Luster. She's not just a business leader, she's a visionary, and she's building something real with people and purpose at its core. Christina, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us.
Carl, thank you so much. What an awesome opening. I just sat there and I was listening and I was like, this is great.
I think there might be a new path for me of going on as a hype man. I know from Roderick, he said, hey, can you do this? And, and even Hubschman, when he was talking, he's like, dude, can you introduce me all the time? I love it.
Yes, it's great.
So as we get kicked off, can you share with the audience just a little bit about your world? So like industries, verticals you work with, selling motions, what size companies, just give a bit of context.
Yeah, at Luster right now. So the benefit of working for a generative AI company is you're not super limited in terms of the types of customers that you can serve, especially because our product does not exist at the infrastructure layer. We're on top of that. So we serve any customer facing go-to-market teams. So if you are an SDR, BDR, account executive, client success manager, account manager, solution consultant, solution engineer, if a part of your job is having a measured conversation with another human, then Luster is a fit for your organization. We tend to really come into organizations when there, I would say, at least 50 go-to-market employees. And then we really don't have a limit in terms of number of people that we can serve. We do have some smaller customers, and we are delighted by them and we love them. But in general, that's kind of where people wind up finding us. No specific vertical. I will say that we are heavily geared toward companies that are having conversations either on the phone or Zoom versus in person. Not that in person is a deal breaker, but the tool is a virtual tool. We're not going to send a robot to your house to let you practice with and whatnot. And so if you're having those phone conversations, that's generally a little bit of a better direct correlation to what we're doing.
Yeah. And maybe it's the answer there is not yet. We're not sending a robot to your house just yet.
And we're going to be a hardware and a software company.
There you go. Entirely new verticals for you to jump into.
I don't want to touch that for so many reasons.
Yeah. So how we got to today's topic is I asked Christina the same question I ask everybody. What's a successful revenue initiative you ever led or an existing challenge you're solving? And it was pretty quick to say, like, kind of without skipping big. She's like, it's how we launched a new technology to our customer base at Groupon, but then we had to figure out how to onboard more customers than we ever had in previous quarters. And so I kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm like, this one can kind of go in multiple ways, and that's really exciting. And I think the question I'd like to ask to start is like, how come this one is your favorite?
This one's my favorite one because it was such a moment of ingenuity amongst a group of us of solving a problem for just like a really tough nut to crack. But then it wound up being not only a wild success, but just like an unbelievable failure in a completely different way. And so I liked this one because it was like, what a win. And then also we made a huge whoops, right? Because we were a lot of young people at a hot startup with a lot of money doing things very quickly. We were like, yay. And so I'll go through the tale of it for you. So one of the issues that we were having at Groupon. So when I was head of revenue for one of the specific teams there called the FIN team, which stood for Future is Now. And the job of this team was to basically pilot new initiatives, new sales motions, and determine if they had viability or legs. And if they did, we'd launch them to the rest of the organization. And if not, we'd kind of fold them and move forward. And so we were kind of the lab environment for Groupon. And one of the things that we were having a hard time solving as a company, as a whole, is really, really popular restaurants, destinations that wanted nothing to do with Groupon, right? Because they had started to get this reputation of like the people who are customers are, they're constantly looking for deals and they're not the customers that we want and we're busy enough. We don't need you. So Groupon was a two-sided marketplace, right? So on the one side, you have the actual customers who are purchasing the Groupons, and those people were like, we want the best of the best that we can buy a Groupon for. And then you had the merchants or the businesses that basically were like, we don't want to work with Groupon because we don't want coupon cutters. We don't want cheap people. We want the best of the best, or we're too busy. So you've got these two people. You've got merchants that are really, really high echelon, like Michelin rated restaurants that are like, we want nothing to do. We're not going to align our brand with that. But then you had the customers on the other side of the marketplace saying, hey, I would love to see this restaurant on Groupon. And so these kind of two things were going on. And so my team was tasked with, how do we solve this problem? How do we get some of these really high-end businesses that have this amazing presence that are slammed usually during the busy times? How do we get them in? So we came up with this idea of pushing Bluetooth technology. So the first time that you would be able to walk by a business and the business would ping your phone and be like, hey, you're walking by so-and-so, pop in right now. That was my team's idea to say, well, what if you're walking by a business and then right at the moment that you're walking by, you get a ping that says, hey, come in for a basket of wings right now, 50% off. And I was like, because then we can tell these organizations they can turn that on whenever they have a lull and they want to fill their tables. And if they don't have a lull, they don't have to turn it on. And could we get some of these really high-end restaurants or businesses or museums that are always slammed to maybe look at something a little bit different? And then on top of that, we can play around with the margins so they get the majority of that, right? But we know we serve one side of the marketplace by kind of getting this technology there. And so we said, okay, how do we do this? So we said, okay, well, first, how are the merchants going to even be able to ping the phones? And so we know that everyone at Groupon has an app that they've downloaded. So we can communicate with the app and we can push a notification through the app. But then the business has to have a corresponding technology and also an app that will ping their phone. So we're like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to send everybody who wants to be a part of this program their own iPad. And on the iPad, we're going to preload the technology that we've built that will ping people's phones as they're walking by. And you have to keep in mind, Groupon at this time is like a unicorn company, more money than we know what to do with. So we're like, how fast can we build the tech and get the iPads and send them to people? And like, we're all excited about it. We're like, we're going to change the world. And so we did it. So we got like 50 of these high-end, high-caliber merchants on board with this. We sent them iPads, they downloaded them, and it started working. And we're able to fill their lulls with hundreds of people who were then walking by, get a ping like, stop in and make some pottery, stop in and visit a museum, stop in and get a basket of fries for half off. And it was working. And so we were like, this is it. We've solved it, right? We're onboarding new merchants. We're able to have these new echelon logos on our website. And so that sounds like an amazing win. And it was. But then we come to like the biggest failure. We forgot to monetize it. Like we forgot to figure out like how Groupon makes money. So we were so carried away with like, buy the iPads and send them the iPads and download the technology and push the tech and do all of that. And so people are buying the Groupons and they're going all to the merchants. So it was pinging them and saying, come on in for 50% off through Groupon. They'd go into the organization and be like, hey, I saw your ping for 50% off. They would just get 50% off. And then Groupon didn't get any cut of it whatsoever. We were just sending them people and they were showing that they could get a discount. So the restaurant was keeping 100% of that. And we caught it like a month later. We were like, wait a minute. We forgot to monetize this. Like we just sent all these restaurants hundreds of customers during lulls and we had no transaction between the customer and Groupon. And so I laugh because it was an amazing initiative and we later fixed it. And still you'll see Bluetooth technology now. I mean, but like that forgetting to monetize it was, I can't believe they didn't fire me, but there you go.
It's really, it's a great story. And there's a couple of comments that I would ask, or there's a couple of things that I'm curious on is there's one part of this is like the future is now, the Fin team. Great name, by the way.
Yeah.
What is the next evolution for us to get these? Because I agree with you. Hey, is there a Groupon? Oh, I have a Groupon. And there is a bit of a stigma, right?
Totally.
I think when I was at Salesforce, I think it was, I'm going to forget Angela. I forget her last name. She was just recently at Apple. She ran their entire corporate store. But before that, she was at a high-end retailer. And I remember her talking about her customer story of like, because they had so much data, they knew about the people, the people that were coming in. Hey, Carl's coming in. By the way, he's going to go to the discount rack. Hey, Christina's coming in. Oh, hey, by the way, she's a high roller. She's going to go over there. Make sure you treat, and I don't want to say you treat them differently, but Angela Everhart, I think is their last name. If I'm right now that I'm thinking through it, but it's interesting to kind of think about that and how what you were doing with these customers is you started to solve a problem that they had that they realized, but you had to change the mentality to the customer. And so maybe the question there is, did you become so obsessed with trying to solve it? Was this maybe the challenge of you came so obsessed with solving a problem that you heard to change the stigma of what Groupon is, that all the evidence was to support them, and then when, oh wait, somebody, hey, Christina, how do we monetize? Like, was there a conversation that happened because you were so focused on solving the problem that Groupon was like, just move as fast as you can, and then the monetization came after? Or how does that conversation happen to say, I see a problem, I want to solve it, and I have to build a business case? Like, how does that go?
Yeah, it was, I would say that like our mindset at the time was never, in order to get these customers to offer a Groupon to their business, we have to change the stigma of the Groupon user. Because to me, that felt like a mountain that we could never climb. Like it is very difficult to be in the business of changing people's minds when their minds are rooted in a lot of reality. Like the reality is, as much as we try to deny it, a lot of the folks who purchased Groupons did have different behavior and different spending habits. And the promise of buying a Groupon was they're going to buy a Groupon and they're going to visit your establishment one time and they're going to love it. And they're going to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And we kind of accidentally created this entire subset of people who were just Groupon hunters, right? And they literally would just get a Groupon, go to a place and never come back. And so that was the buyer behavior. And so in my mind, it was, we cannot have the barrier to entry to better merchants on the site be changing their mind about user behavior. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all have very, very similar behavior. And if you're telling me that I can get any restaurant on Groupon and I can get a different discount every week, I'm going to start doing what I can do to save as much money as possible. It doesn't mean I'm a cheap person. It means there's a behavior that's kind of allowing me to lean into that. And so I was like, it's not about changing their paradigm on who these people are. It's about how do I help them see value and getting those people in, right? So then the conversation was, we need them to see value in having customer flow, regardless of who that customer is. And so what I'm not going to do with these organizations, take a Michelin star restaurant, right? I'm not going to go and say, hey, let's run a Groupon Friday and Saturday night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and let's flood you with people, right? Because they're like, we're already flooded with people. But some of the questions we asked was, when are you popping a goose egg? Like when are you at the point where the tables in the restaurant are not covering the cost of operation? Because those high customer flow moments first are making up for the lulls where your business is in the red, right? And also you're a Michelin star restaurant, so your margins are already a lot lower than a typical restaurant. And so how many hours of the day are you not at capacity? And that amount of time that you're not at capacity, how much is that costing you, and the people that you are hiring and the food that you are burning? Like, how much does an empty table cost you? So when do you have empty tables? You can tell us when you have empty tables. When you have empty tables and you want to fill that table, currently that table's making $0. When you turn this on, that table can be making $1, $2, $3, $4, $10, $20, $50. It would have been $0. So in their mind, there's no loss. We're not saying, hey, we're going to replace a full paying table with a Groupon customer. We're saying we're going to take empty tables. You tell us when. You turn it on when you want it. You don't ever want to turn this on and get deal flow. You don't have to. So I became more obsessed with the idea of, how do I help them understand the value and the money lost by not having a full table and not care about who's sitting at that table at the time? So I became obsessed with that, right? Like my whole goal as a salesperson is I need people to see the value and tie that to a problem, because all human beings buy the exact same way. We buy everything the exact, like every decision that we make, it's the exact same thing. It's, do I have a problem? Should I solve it? Should I solve it right now? And should I solve it with you? And so how do I align Groupon with this? Do you have a problem? You got an empty table? Do you want to solve that? You do. You want to solve that right now? Sure. I think Groupon can help you. So how do I align that with the way that human beings naturally buy? That was the obsession. And then when we realized we weren't monetizing, I mean, it was a quick, like we figured it out real quick, right? Because when my CRO came to me and was like, so where are we at with revenue on the new Fin initiative? I was like, well, we've pushed a lot of Bluetooth, and we've heard feedback from them that they're getting filled up, but we did forget to institute a policy where people have to actually purchase a Groupon in order to come in. So we did make that mistake.
Yeah.
But there you go.
How did you go to those restaurant owners? Because it is changing the stigma and you're bringing them an entirely new technology. So I'm trying to put myself into the owner's shoes as well as yours. And you go, look, I know this is a problem, and you obsessed over it. And I think that's one of the things with great salespeople do. They obsess over the problem and try to figure out how to solve it. And then you bring it to somebody to convince them. Because at this time, the Bluetooth pinging technology was, I think if I'm saying it correctly, it was just starting to become like, oh, this is interesting, because that near field communication was just starting to become a thing. So when you went to a business owner and these restaurant owners said, hey, this is what I'm going to do, where was there pushback from to you to be like, look, Christina, this will never work, or I just don't get it, so just move on?
It was never, I don't get it. I mean, this was like 2013, 2014. So this technology was really, really early. And I would say the benefit of small business owners, to, like, if you're talking to like restaurants and spas and leisure, like they like new and iterative. These people are entrepreneurs, they're inventors, they're innovators. So it was actually hard at first to get them to take a call with Groupon. Right? Because the hardest thing to do was to get them to take a call with us, right? Because we call and be like, hey, it's, so-and-so calling from Groupon, and they'd be like, nope, click. Like, so, and then we're emailing and it's instant delete, right? Like they didn't even want to talk to us. So this was more a front of funnel exercise in how do we, in the 5 seconds that we get them on the line, have them not have that immediate, like, ugh, Groupon's been calling us nonstop for the last 5 years. We're not talking. We're like, wait, we have something different, which we've also said, like, the reality is we had burned a lot of relationship equity with them. And so now we're calling with something new and different. Well, we've done that before. So on top of that, this was when call recording was coming into play. And so what we had to do at the time with call recording, they fixed it now with things like Zoom, but what we had to do was they'd answer the phone and we would have to answer it like this. If we were recording the call, which the company company was trying to make mandatory, of course, for quality and assurance purposes. So you'd have to be like, hi, this is Christina calling from Groupon, a recorded line for quality. Is it okay if we proceed and do you consent to being recorded? That's what we'd have to say before they say anything. And it was like instant click. And so then we'd say, well, we need to make these calls without recording. Well, the company didn't like that. They're like, we bought the call recording system. We want people's calls recorded. We're like, but the minute they say hello, then I have to give that whole speech. And if we don't give that speech, the company can be sued. So we had all these mountains in front of us as to like, how do we actually just get them on the phone? When we could get them on the phone or get them via email, where we actually had a lot of success was just walking in the restaurant and being like, I'm here, talk to me, right? So like the people on the ground. So like I'd fly to Minnesota, I'd fly to New York with my team, I'd fly to these places and be like, we're going to walk in during a lull and first say, I was just in here for the last 10 minutes and I counted 17 open tables right now. Wouldn't it be nice if you were able to have somebody walk in here and fill these 17 open tables that I'm actually looking at? And so it was more an exercise on top of funnel. Once we actually talked to them and said, listen to what we're doing. And if you hate it, you'll never see us again. I will literally remove your company from everything. Like you will never hear from us again. But like, just, here's an idea for you, right?
Yeah.
Then they were on board and they liked the idea of it. So we rarely got pushback, but I can't underestimate how or under articulate how difficult it was to get these businesses to give us the time of day.
There's a prime example here with idea and execution, how they're misaligned, because you have an operational rigor that says we want it to be like this. And I think operational rigor is incredibly important. That's one of the things that I'm a big believer in, with a caveat. Because what was happening is you had blockers, right? You had blockers right from the beginning. And that's, as you were talking, I started writing it down. I'm like, so do you call versus in person? So my immediate thought is like, you're blocked there. Did you just start traveling? And how did you start to get these meetings? Were you just going, okay, I'm going to look at Minnesota. You said Minnesota. I'm going to go to this into this area because there's 100 restaurants and I'm just going to go and do old fashioned door knocking and say, hey, by the way, are you the owner? Hey, I got an idea for you. Was that a way of, and I don't want to say getting around it, but creating momentum when you had blockers in front of you?
We tried all kinds of things. So the Fin team that I had was a smaller team and we were able to sell in any metro area, but we also didn't want to step on the toes of the regular reps that were outside of the Fin team. We're just working their territory. So we had a multi-pronged strategy to get in front of people. One of them was absolutely boots on the ground. So we said, okay, we are trying to hit these 5 Michelin rated restaurants in New York City, Manhattan. We know that we have outside reps that operate in Manhattan. Let's see whose territory these restaurants fall into, and we'll double pay on the commission, right? So if they're able to get us as the Fin team on a call with the restaurant and then we close them on Groupon, which they've not been able to, we'll pay the rep for the intro and we'll pay the Fin rep, right? So, okay, so we'll pay double. So can we utilize the boots on the ground to walk in? So then we'd have to find that rep and be like, here's the pitch. Here's what you're asking them. We just need you to get them to talk to us, right? And that was successful. Another one was we would go ourselves. If we found a restaurant that wasn't in anybody's territory, we're like, okay, we're going to board a plane. We're going to go. We're going to walk in. We're going to try to talk to them. Another one was just continuing to hit the phones and try to leave different voicemails. Because if you were leaving a voicemail, you didn't have to do the whole like, this is Christina calling from Groupon. So we were able to say like, this is what it is. So we actually liked leaving voicemails. So we would leave voicemail and voicemail and voicemail. We'd email over and over again. There were times where we would send cookies or send cupcakes. We would send swag. I mean, we were trying so many different ideas just to get folks to talk to us. And it worked. Like it was an amazing top of funnel exercise. And keep in mind, these are small business owners. A lot of them are not on LinkedIn, right? We were not a B2B SaaS company selling to B2B SaaS. We were a B2B SaaS company selling to like Ma and Pa's famous chowder shop on Cape Cod. Like their owners who have owned this restaurant for 45 years are not on LinkedIn, right? So traditional channels now that it's like, oh, just do the triple, call them, email them, ping them on LinkedIn, pow. Like we couldn't do that. We were like, we have to get in front of like Tom. Tom is 65. He hates you. Like, you have to get in front of him. Like, you know what I mean? Like he hates the internet, you know? So it's like, we just had unique challenges, but it was probably the biggest growth area of my career of just having to solve that problem of like, how do we get people to give a damn? Like, how do we get them to give a damn? And the way that your brain starts to connect things together is really fun.
It's awesome to solve it and be so passionate about it. Because there's a genuine concern that there's a I guess it's genuine. I don't know. I'll keep saying the genuine. But when you're so passionate and you're genuine about, look, I really want to help you solve this problem, and I see that there's an issue, and I can see there's an opportunity. It's different. And even what you're talking about is like, there's a level of grit, right? That come into play. I mean, I've heard it from many companies of like, well, my reps make one call on one account and then they move on. No, no, no. Like, hey, look, leave that voicemail because you don't know if somebody's going to listen to it. Leave that email. And I love the idea of sending, I'll say a gift, right? Like it's a gift. I've used this in others where you send them a book with a handwritten scripture in it and you get responses back. It's a great way of building that top of funnel. So if we sort of, because there's two topics in here. So now it sounds like you've got a chance, you've figured out how to get people to talk to you. You're now starting to see success. The company is the customers are starting to leverage the technology. But now you've got all these new customers and it's a new technology. So how did that onboarding of how did the relationship between what you're doing with sales and then on the CS to say, hey, by the way, we have all these new customers and here's how to onboard. What did that moment or what did that experience look like? Because I think I hear this fairly common thing with other leaders is like, great, I signed all these new customers. Now it's over to the CS team and either it goes well or it doesn't go well and there's misaligned expectations. How did you solve that, or how did you work internally to make sure that these new customers, that you've got them fired up about an entirely new way of going about it, you turn it over to your team, now you got to onboard it, or maybe the onboarding happened in your team?
Yeah, it did. So the benefit of being able to run that Fin team was it was a full go-to-market team, sort of within regular go-to-market. So we had our own IT, we had our own legal, we had our own sales reps, we had our own, we called them merchant managers, we were basically account managers. We had our own implementation team, we had our own marketing team. I mean, it truly was an entire pretty large team within a team. And so the challenge was there was no blueprint for what we were doing. What we anticipated was that we were going to have to tell folks basically how to treat Groupon customers and how to actually process them and how to do all of those things. What we did not anticipate was a lot of the technological gaps that people would have, especially you're working with some of these restaurants or businesses where they're not super tech savvy, right? They still have a POS system from the Stone Age. And now you're giving them an iPad, like a really smooth, sleek piece of technology, and they have to log into that and they have to go into the app and they have to input all of their information correctly and they have to process the Groupons and they have to scan them and they have to do all of these things. And a lot of times they'd never done that before. And so what we realized is there was going to be a technical implementation of these things. Another thing is we were having to advertise these restaurants and these businesses on Groupon. Well, then we're talking about having marketing collateral. We're talking about having a written word about them and you need to get their approval on that, right? Like this is the write-up that we are doing on you. Do you approve that? And trying to get through to them to have that done. Then there's the whole customer support element of this, right? If you have a customer that is walking by, say, a restaurant, we keep using it as the easiest example, and it's like, hey, stop in right now and get 25% off your total bill. And they're like, great. So they go into the organization and they have a terrible experience, right? They have a terrible experience. Well, that's Groupon's customer that had a terrible experience is also that business's customer that had a terrible experience. And what we found would happen is when people would come in and say, hey, we had a bad experience, this is terrible, they'd say, well, go talk to Groupon. You came in on a Groupon, go talk to them, right? So they'd call us and say, we had a horrible experience. It was a $200 bill. The 25% off didn't do anything. The food was awful. We want you to refund us. Groupon would say, well, we don't have your money. Like they have your money. Like you paid them. You have to go to them. They're like, well, they told us to go to you, right? So then there's this whole customer support element where you have to now educate the two-sided marketplace. So then we had to come up with terms and conditions. Now, the good news is a lot of this had already been pre-built by existing Groupon, right? Like the ability to buy a traditional Groupon and all of these issues that went along with it had already existed. So we had a skeleton framework that we could go off of in terms of how do we onboard? How do we write their marketing collateral? How do we train people to use the technology? We had a loose idea of how to do all of those things, but this new way to go about it also presented some new and different challenges that we just kind of had to take on as they came. It's actually what helped us also to understand that we weren't monetizing this the way that we needed to, because people would go in and be like, hey, I went in and I showed my Groupon and they didn't give me the discount, like, and they'd file a complaint with us. And we're like, well, you showed the group, we have no proof that you did that, right? Like there was no transaction between you and Groupon whatsoever. So we can see that we pushed it to phones in the vicinity, but we have no idea to track if you actually went in with a Groupon or not. And so I would say it was a lot of like learning as we go and figuring it out on the fly. Like that team was about building the plane while it's in the air. And you think it's going to be unique to that experience, and it's not, especially now being a startup founder. You absolutely build the plane while it's in the air. You know, you're like, this is just what you do. You know, this is just normal.
Yeah, that's funny how that experience is. I don't want to speak for you. It probably prepared you to be a CEO and all the things, because when you're at a small company and you're going as fast as you can, you're throwing bubble gum and duct tape on things just to make sure it's staying afloat.
Anything.
Yeah. And so as you continued with that, because now you went from, you had operational challenges of like trying to get people to talk to you. Now you're getting people to talk to you. And now you have a whole other operational challenge that you've got to solve to make sure you smooth that process in.
Yep.
So now when you have those people that are coming back to you, how did you educate both at the same time? You educate the customer, and then you also educated the merchant to say, hey, customer, I appreciate you've come in. Sorry, I'm using my hands just for sake of.
I use my hands too.
Okay, cool.
So I'm here.
Hey, customer, you've come in. I understand your challenges. Here's how this works. Hey, merchant, if somebody comes in, here's what you need to do. Hey, customer. And so it's a relationship between, I don't want to say the relationship between the three of you, but it kind of is, because you're the caveat that binds them together. How did you have to solve that? Did you have to deploy a team to say, here's how you do an FAQ? Did you launch an FAQ in your website for the customers, and then did you do the same thing for the merchants and say, hey, by the way, in order to use this, you're going to go through an onboarding? How did you have both conversations at the same time to smooth this out?
Yeah, I would say one, all of the above. So we eventually wound up building a help center and self-serve, and we had a reactive support team when they would write in. The main lesson that we learned, if you pull back and do like a 10,000 foot view, is it's a lot easier to educate people when they're not mad. And so with that,
yeah.
You know, like what that means is you don't want to educate somebody on the proper process or be fixing problems after they've already stepped in mud and now you're trying to course correct. And so we took the first 10 or 15 step in mud moments and said, now how do we proactively prepare the two-sided marketplace to take this on? And this was something we had to do again, like for Groupon in general, but then also my team, which is like where we learned by when we've tripped, we're ahead of time now. When somebody buys a Groupon, what kind of fine print do they get? What kind of instructions do they get? What kind of immediate information do they get in the FAQs? What kind of resources do we give them ahead of time that they can click on and go and view? What boxes do we make them check where they literally say, I read this and I understand the policy and I'm still buying it, right? How do we cover ourselves there? And then the same thing on the merchant side of things, right? Before they're calling and they're like, this customer is terrible, or like, you didn't pay me, or you sold them all at the wrong time, or we're making no money. Like before all that happens, it's let's have the proper onboarding education, the proper implementation education, the proper exact same educational process that they're able to go through and have access to a refresher of that information at all times, so that when something does go wrong and they're calling in and they're angry, we're able to then say, hey, let's de-escalate the situation. Let's go back to the resources that you already have. Let's show that we understand the position that you're in, why you're frustrated. Let's first fix the issue for you. And then let's re-educate you now that we're all back down to a level place on how we can avoid this going forward. The magic in that is hiring the right people and training them the right way. That takes really, really good talent on the company side of things to be able to take somebody through that journey, educate them properly on the front end, but also make sure that they know how to handle people that are displaying a variety of emotions for a variety of different reasons on the back end. Because the other thing that I learned about small business owners is their business is their life. Their business is their livelihood. When something goes wrong in their business, when they get a bad review, like don't even get me started on when reviews would come in and people would kick off like, we bought a Groupon, and they're like, oh, the Groupon people are leaving terrible review, like, so, but you have to realize like this is their baby. And when somebody buys a Groupon and then goes and leaves a bad review on Yelp or wherever, it's like it's calling their kids ugly, it's punching their baby in the face, like. And so we just had to make sure that our employees had a high level of empathy for the people that we were serving, and we trained them not to get furious but to get curious. And that's just a different mindset when you're serving people. And again, I've taken those lessons with me in my career.
I love that. Not furious, curious. I've never heard that before. That is awesome. There's the only other way I've heard about it is, it's funny, but I won't say the whole backstory. But the thing I heard was change your F word. Don't be frustrated. Be fascinated.
Yeah. Very similar concept there. Somebody gets really angry, and instead of telling them why they're really, really angry, it's like, I hear you. Like, I want to make sure that I heard exactly what the problem is. You're upset because of this, this, and this. I completely understand that. Talk to me more about what happened here. Like, why is it, So there's this idea of how do I de-escalate by first showing that you're understood. When somebody is coming at you and they're angry or they're in any element of emotion, what they want is not for you to immediately solve their problem. What they want to know is, did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? And is the next thing that's going to come out of your mouth coming from a place of understanding? Because if it's not, I'm just going to get angrier and angrier and angrier, and I'm going to get further and further and further in my corner. And so that's a skill that we have to teach people, is how do you show understanding? How do you show executive level listening? How do you display empathy? And then how do we solve their problem once we have their understanding that I'm with you, I'm here, I understand the problem, absolutely, and then let's move forward.
Yeah, that's it's incredibly true, because people come to you and they're in fight or flight mode, right? Like, I'm a leader, I'm going to fight with you. And how do you break that barrier just to at least get them to hear? And it, especially in those small businesses, because you're right. My wife was a cafe owner. She's had two. I'm lucky that my wife is a French trained chef. So there's a whole other story probably for another time. But her going through that experience with what do I buy and how, because every time she would do something, it's her money. It's not it's like, that's the livelihood. Hey, I want to make sure I place the right bet for my business and what I'm doing. So
that's exactly it.
So I have an inclination that there's probably a correlation between what you saw with Groupon and some of the things you did and where we are with Luster. But I'll maybe pause that for a second. As we're sort of trying to get to wrap this topic up, because I would like to ask a carry-on question, but just in this one. If I typically ask somebody, I ask everybody, hey, everybody likes new, nobody likes different. And when you do both at the same time, it can cause friction or uncertainty. I don't know that there's ever a conversation I've had that what we're talking about today hits this one directly on the head, right? Because you're doing both new and different at the same time. If for somebody that's thinking about launching a new product or into a new market, or creating the operational, like the stuff that we've talked about today, of like, hey, I'm going to go find a case and I'm going to solve it. What are 2 or 3 actionable things that you learned from that experience that you would now take to your day-to-day to tell somebody, hey, look for these 2 or 3 things so you can avoid the pitfalls that I went through?
Yeah, I would say all of them have to do with how you approach it qualitatively instead of quantitatively. Most people think if I just explain to everyone exactly what's going on and telling them what's happening and giving them all the detail in that exact order, that's the right way to go about communicating. We're just going to tell people what's going on and what they need to know and what it's going to look like. And most people, when they realize as you're going, okay, wow, this is really, really new. Okay. And then they get all the feelings around like, this is new. And so they kind of disconnect from what you're saying. And now they're processing their feelings around like, you're telling me a brand new thing and this is really, really scary. So now they're not listening to you. So they missed an entire middle chunk. And then you keep going, they're like, oh my God, well, that's different. Oh God, well, that's different. And then they go into a fear state, right? You think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Even if what you're telling somebody is something good, you're shaking their foundation. You're shaking their foundation because it's new and it's different. So the first thing to do qualitatively when you have to institute any kind of a new and different change is let people know that that's what they're about to hear. You're about to hear something that's going to sound brand new and it's going to be different. And the first thing that I want to do is help you all understand why we're making this decision. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm going to tell you all of the things that led us here. right? Give people the context first, because if you don't give them the context, they're going to fill it in. Are we making this change because the company is in trouble? Are we all going to lose our jobs? Is there something that we don't know about? Why is this happening? Is there a new like they start going off. Meanwhile, you're like, blah, 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 blah. I'm being so great reading my slide. Nobody's listening to you. They're all having their own journey of panic and you're not there. They're screaming internally inside of their own minds and you're not hearing any of it. So the first is you're going to hear something that's new and something that's different.
Yeah.
And I know that can be jarring. Let's talk about how we got here and why. Right? Here's the context that you need to know is driving this new and this different change. And then when you're finished giving them the context, tell them how they should feel about it, right? First is, this is actually a really, really good change, or this is a difficult change for us. This is a change that we're having to make because these things aren't going well, right? It is what it is, and we're being honest. So then you tell them, hey, this is actually a really, really good change. And the information I'm about to go through, I'm going to tell each of you exactly how you're going to win and why it's better. So let's start there. Pause before you do that for questions, clarifications, let people express their feelings, let them get to the point where they are fully ready to now say, okay, now I'm not furious about the change. I'm curious about the change, right? You get them from there as well. So there's something new and different. I understand the context. You're telling me it's going to be good for me. So what is it, right? You want the point where then I want you to tell me what it is. Well, now you can go through what the new and the different changes, right? So now it's this, here's how it's going to impact you. We all got that. Great. Let's have a conversation about it. So if you take people along the journey and qualitatively, you let them react like human beings as they are, well, then you can give them any information that you need because they feel heard, they understand, they've been able to go through the entire emotional journey of ups and downs of hearing new information. And now you have everybody on the same page. And so I would say it's more that. It's about how do you bring people with you by understanding, again, like the basics of human behavior.
Focus on the problem, not the person. Right. The problem we're trying to solve is the thing. That's sort of what I heard. But that's awesome. Before we wrap up, can I ask you a question about Luster? Because I see the board behind you, which is very cool.
Yeah.
I think it's did your aha for Luster stem from some of your experience with Groupon? Because you talked about the hiring and the training and the differences, and what you're doing with Luster feels like it's connected. Am I way off that you started to gather an idea from here, or you're connecting dots?
You're not way off at all. The idea to start Luster actually came from a culmination of my entire experience. And so, as you so eloquently laid out, way better than I can, my background, I'm, for all intents and purposes, I'm an 18-year operator. Started my career as an AE, worked my way up to C-suite positions, jumped over to be a CEO. I've also been a trainer for the last 15 years. So I've not only done the job of a salesperson and grown go-to-market teams and done my own training internally, I've also been an enabler and I've been a trainer. I'm certified in 7 different methodologies. I've spoken at over 150 SKOs, and I've been lucky enough to up-level over 30,000 reps. And the reality is, one of the things that I saw was twofold. One, I have yet to find a revenue producer or supporter of any kind that is like, you know what, I'm actually keenly aware of the skill proficiency gaps that I have that are preventing me from being successful in my role. And I know exactly what training and enablement resources I need to overcome those gaps. I'll go ahead and take care of myself. It doesn't happen. So the self-awareness of individuals to understand what's stopping them from a skill standpoint of doing their job doesn't exist. So that's one thing that exists here. So we're giving them all this information and we're saying, hey, we just downloaded you with all of this information. Now go perform. And they're like, I guess I'll try some of this stuff and see how it goes and see if I can close some deals or some renewals. And then on the flip side, you have organizations that are saying, we're doing all this training, we're doing all this enablement. We have no idea how to actually measure if it's working or not. I don't know if people are using what we've given them on a call. I don't know if they were paying attention during the training. I don't know if this actually sunk in. I don't know if this training is actually leading to better produced results. I don't know. We think that it is. We're looking at a lot of data that's telling us it might be, it might not be, but there is so much gray area around this underlying missing data point. And as my time as an operator and a trainer, it was something that nobody was solving for, right? Do you have the capability to look at my entire team's proficiency and tell me their readiness to do their job today? And then can you go one step further and say, based on your proficiency today and the actual customer conversations that you have on your calendar, can you tell me where you're about to make a revenue impacting mistake? Not after the fact. I don't want to listen to this call 2 weeks later and be like, oh my God, we botched it. I want to know ahead of time. If you can see my proficiency, then you can tell where I'm about to step on mud on actual calls. And if you can see where I'm about to step on mud during actual calls because of a measured skill gap, well, then you can get ahead of that. Can't you then help to train me against those specific skill gaps that I'm going to have to use on that call tomorrow versus train me on everything all the time? Can't you just then do bite-sized training and help me be my best self on every single call? That's what I wanted as a trainer, as a revenue producer, as a revenue executive, and it didn't exist. And I said, if you can do that and you can do it properly and objectively, you can change the way that go-to-market teams produce revenue and scale. It didn't exist. And so that's what made me build it. So my time at Groupon, totally. But it was more just like my frustration of just being in this job and not having what I needed until it was too late.
It's amazing. It's the micro learning that happens. And one of the things that I've also been in enablement and helped to help build an enablement company, but also being leading enablement is you don't know your own blind spots. We don't know our own blind spots. That's why we need coaches and we need stuff that, like technology, like you're building now. Hey, by the way, Carl, you got a blind spot that's over there. Did you realize it? And no, I didn't. So surfacing that up and helping repair, it's just like, it sounds like you've got an on-demand coach showing you, hey, by the way, there's this coming at you. Think about this, reinforce, etc. But amazing. And so not to keep you, because I know we're we're going to run up to the clock here. So maybe
I love it.
If people are curious, I absolutely suggest that you pay attention to Christina. Before we go, where can people find you? What's the best way for people to maybe pay attention to you or connect with you, or where would you suggest people look?
Yeah, if you're looking to hunt me down, the easiest place is going to be LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. And then also, if you're interested in talking about Luster and how predictive enablement can change the way that you're producing revenue, you can visit us at Luster.ai. You can fill out a form. You can find me in both of those places. And so happy to talk to all of my new friends.
Amazing. She's not hard to find. You'll see some very cool things. They're doing awesome stuff. But as we sort of move to enablement and coaching are two things that I believe in strongly. If you're growing your sales team, you can't be on every call. As much as there's AI to help, there's a gap. Luster is definitely a game changer for this. If you're growing your team quickly and you're building a world-class team, pay attention. Like what Christina and the team are building, it's filling a gap that it's definitely needed. So that's going to wrap up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. Christina, thank you for sharing these invaluable insights. And obviously, hopefully you heard the strategy you can put into action. Remember, success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Carl with Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn your obstacles into opportunities. Thank you for investing your time with us today, and we'll see you on the next episode.